Internet killed TV, music, and now it's finishing by slaughtering print media. We're going to examine a post-print world and eulogize newspapers in the loop. What's black and white and red all over? Yeah, it's not your local newspaper. In recent years, increasing costs and declining revenues have put the newspaper industry in a state of emergency. Papers across the nation are slashing staff, cutting production, going online only, or closing down entirely. Should the print industry face facts and give way to the immediacy of the internet? Or does news suffer when a town loses its papers? Stop the presses! It's The Loop. Did I just say TV's dead before going into... I did. Okay. Joining me from New York to help us make sense of it all, editor at BusinessInsider.com, Nicholas Carlson is here. How are you, Nicholas?
I'm good. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing better than most newspapers, apparently. But thank you for asking. Figures came out this morning. Yeah. They said that newspaper circulation declined on average over 7% in the last 6 months. Now, I mean, I knew things are bad. We've been hearing that things are bad. I've been reading about it online since I certainly haven't picked up a newspaper in ages. But 7% doesn't sound all that terrible. Is it really that bad?
It's terrible. It's bad because if you think about it, if you look at the top 25 newspapers, 23 of them went down in the last year. And the two that went up are the Wall Street Journal. And the reason they went up is because they've cut their subscription in half for more than, they've doubled the amount of subscription discounting they're doing.
Wow.
And the other one that went up is the Denver Post, which got all of the Rocky Mountain News subscribers when the Rocky Mountain News went out of business.
Yeah, so Rocky Mountain News goes out. What other papers have actually gone out? Or, I mean, are most papers, are they going out of business or are they going to an online-only model? What's happening in the print world right now?
Well, some are going to online only. There's the Seattle PI, which is going online only, and that's really Hearst Corporation's experiment with online only. They just sort of, it's a two-newspaper town. Amazon.com is in that town. Microsoft is in that town. If you're going to give online only a shot, that's a good place to do it. So that's what they're thinking there. And then, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just wondering who's actually closed their doors completely. Who's hung up the press?
Well, the Rocky Mountain News in Denver is just gone, and so is the New York Sun. It's gone too, and some others are on the way. So it's bad out there.
Well, where do we lay the blame then? Is it on the Kindle-toting hipsters in their Mac Genius bars, hanging out, reading that online newfangled news, or like who's to blame here?
It actually doesn't. It has something to do with where people are reading their news, but it mostly has to do with where people are finding things to buy. So instead of going to the newspaper classifieds, people are going to Craigslist and Google. Craigslist is free, which is an impossible model to compete with for the newspapers.
Right.
And then the other big issue is that some people are moving online and with their reading. And the other really big problem is just management bloat. For years, these newspapers have monopolies in their in their towns. And so I was talking to a newspaper investor the other day, and he told me that the newspaper was what you used to give your brother-in-law to run, because you had these huge classified revenues coming in, there was no competition in town, and it was so the head count blew up, and these organizations are just they're huge, and they don't need to be. So that's one of the big problems, too.
Yeah, it only takes one guy to manage the creepy sex acts portion of Craigslist, whereas it takes 10 people to do it on the local paper. So, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
But, all right, let's say, Nicholas, that you're in charge of a paper like the New York Times tomorrow. You wake up, you suddenly have the power, you're somebody's brother-in-law, it's been bestowed upon you. What do you do to save it?
Well, I think there's two different kinds of newspapers to talk about here. There's the New York Times, which is this international brand. It's something to deal with in itself. And what they can do, because they have so many trades they cover so well, and they're so important to so many people, I think they can charge online. They can charge an online subscription, put up a paywall. And they also need to go through layoffs as well. We think at Business Insider, we think they need to cut their newsroom staff by about 30%. Because we hear that about 8 to 13 editors look at a story before it goes online or into print, and that's just ridiculous.
All right, Nicholas,
and then the other thing,
real quick, because we're almost out of time and I want to get to this. I don't know about the paywall, because I won't even sit through the free ad on salon.com, but maybe some would pay to get there. But there's been this big concern that if the papers go under, all of a sudden that's a sign that journalism as we know it goes under. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if the newspapers aren't making that money, maybe the blogs will be making that money so they can afford to send Perez overseas so he can give us some reporting from the field, right? We don't lose our sources.
I don't want to see Perez talking to President Talabani.
But we don't lose those critical sources, right?
No. The truth is that just because newspapers are going away doesn't mean sources will. Look at Deep Throat. Look at the biggest investigative journalism story of all time. You know, bringing down Nixon, Woodward and Bernstein. The only reason that happened is because there was a source inside the FBI that was angry with President Nixon for politicizing the FBI. So that guy is the one who went to Woodward and Bernstein, and they just sort of did the, you know, not to belittle journalists, but they followed up. You know.
Right.
He's the one who brought him in the news. The sources won't go away. They'll still have an interest in going to the biggest megaphone they can find and getting the news out there.
Yeah, online, offline, it won't matter to them. Nicholas, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for joining us and keeping us in the loop. Really appreciate it.